A lot of people do not like to have difficult conversations, and I completely understand. It can be challenging, and we start to have this fear come up of, oh my goodness, I have to have this difficult conversation. It's going to go this way, and we have this fear and this anxiety that comes up, and then we start to avoid it because we don't want to have the conversation. So we let the conversation go on and on and on until we just like explode one day, and then the conversation comes, or we just never have the conversation. This is a common theme amongst business leaders and all kinds of types of people that have the fear of having a difficult conversation. And this is why I wanted to make this video, to give you some tips, some things that have helped me and that I know that have helped our clients as we help them have difficult conversations. Regardless what, you're never going to get through life without having difficult conversations. It's just not going to happen. Shocker, right? I'm Emily, and I am here to teach you leadership, business, spirituality, and all things growth. Welcome to my channel. And today I really want to give you some tools and techniques to really have difficult conversations, but make them in a way where they don't feel like they're filled with dread, and give you some tips that you can implement today on the conversations that you know you need to have that you've been avoiding. Ask me how I know, because I used to be one of those people that would avoid the difficult conversations because I didn't want the confrontation, right? It just didn't feel good. I didn't want it. I was already chirping about how the conversation was going to go when really it didn't even go that way. So we're going to talk about it. So the first thing I want to talk about is, this is normal. A lot of people have it. You're not alone in having this fear of having a difficult conversation. And there can be some root stems in why you have this fear of having a difficult conversation. Maybe your voice was not heard when you were growing up, or at one time you try to have a conversation, difficult conversation, it blew up in your face and that traumatized you, and you're like, no more of that. Let me just bottle it up until you bottle it up and then you explode. That's not always healthy either, right? So regardless of what it is, there is a newer way, an easier way. We're going to talk about this, of having a difficult conversation. So when you know that you need to have a difficult conversation, the very first step is taking responsibility for that. Taking ownership that I know I need to have this conversation, and so therefore I get to have this conversation. And it's also noticing in your body where that fear and that anxiety is at, and don't ignore it. Like, actually acknowledge it and let it be there. Fear and anxiety aren't something that we have to ignore. It's something that we get to feel. Like, it's safe for us to feel that. It's just like feeling happiness. It's safe for you to feel that. You're not going to die, even though our brain tells us that you're going to die. You're really not. So it's really owning that I need to have this difficult conversation, and then feeling the sensations in your body. Before you have the conversation that you need to have, regardless of if it's with your team, a client, children, spouse, whatever it is, take some time to ground in yourself. And I talk a lot about this, is grounding in yourself and being neutral. And I've talked about this in other videos where we teach our clients how to operate in a neutral space instead of being in a high and being in a low. Because when you're in a high or a low, you're going to operate differently. And sometimes that's going to impact your outcome. Sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad, right? It's learning. But when you're having these difficult conversations, get grounded in and grounded down to just being in a neutral space. And if you don't know how to get into a neutral space, just take like 3 deep breaths into your stomach and really ground down. And if you don't know how to do these skills, like, comment below. I'm happy to even do more videos around how to get grounded into your own energy and stay in that space of groundedness. A lot of people, interesting enough, don't know how to operate there. I used to be one of those that I would operate out of my head and not be grounded. So once you're grounded, sit down and really ask yourself, make bullet points. So anytime I have to have a difficult conversation, I make bullet points so I can see it and read it before having the conversation, to make sure that I'm not over emotional about it. Yes, I get to have emotions. Yes, I get to feel those emotions, but making sure that it's coming from a healthy space and I'm not projecting these emotions on the person that I need to have this difficult conversation with. Because a lot of times with difficult conversations, it can bring up emotions, right? And we start to spiral into, this is why yelling and angry and all these things happen, because we start to spiral because we go down that route and we go completely off track. Instead of stating the facts of what you want to talk about and to have the difficult conversation, we just spiral. So if you have some bullet points of what you want to talk about, and when you start the conversation, I've seen so many leaders do this where they start the conversation, they say what they want to say, and they end the conversation. They don't even let the other person talk back, like to receive feedback, right? And so when we have conversations, this is a two-way street. Even when it's a difficult conversation, it's a two-way street. It's never a one-way street. So if I need to have a difficult conversation with you, I'm going to state what I need to state in a calm manner. And then I'm going to also listen to what you have to say. Because what you have to say may be completely different, and this whole conversation could have been avoided, right? The difficult conversation, maybe it was a misunderstanding. So many times, the miscommunication leads to us having difficult conversations. So once we're in a grounded state and we have our points, we can ask the other person to have a conversation like, hey, I would like to have a conversation over X, Y, Z. When do you have some time available? It's as simple as that. Don't make it more complicated. Don't make it more harder than what it is. It's simple stating that and staying in a neutral space. And if you catch yourself growing to like, oh my goodness, like I don't want to have this conversation and your brain is running wild, you're not ready to have that difficult conversation. Get grounded in, calm your mind, calm your brain. It's okay. Take some deep breaths and drop back onto your body, because that's where you want to operate from by having those difficult conversations, because you don't want to be in this state of anxiety and fright, because that's going to go into your communication when you're trying to talk to them. State the facts, listen to what they have to say, receive the feedback. And if there's things that you need to continue talking through, get curious. It's not just about you stating what you need to state and then running away. No, it's a conversation. So it's between two people. It takes two people to have the conversation. Therefore, both of you get to be seen and heard. And as a leader, it is your responsibility to make sure that you see and hear your people. It is your responsibility to make sure that they feel respected, even though it may be a challenging conversation and a difficult conversation. But in the process of it, you still have the responsibility and the accountability to make sure that they are seen, heard, and respected, because they are following you as a leader. You are the example. You get to take that responsibility. You get to take that accountability. And if you don't know how to take that responsibility and accountability, there's your opportunity for growth. We help leaders with this all the time, to take radical responsibility and some huge accountability for their own actions before they start asking their team for stuff that they wouldn't do themselves. And so you get to really understand this before you go into having a difficult conversation with your team or your clients, whichever one it may be, or your children, that you are the leader, you take responsibility. And even though it's a hard conversation, you get to also listen to their point. You get to hear them. And so kind of just to bring this all together, when you're getting ready to have a difficult conversation, take the time to ground down, to be in a neutral space and a neutral place. If that means you need to take a few hours or a day or 2 days or whatever, get there. Like that's going to be key. Because the last thing you want to do is go in a heightened state and start throwing out, then words are going to come out that you're going to regret. Nobody wants that. Everybody knows that sucks, because later you're going to have to go apologize. And it also shows that you don't have no control. You lost control. So been there, done that. Once you're there in that space, write down the bullet points of what you would want to talk about, and make sure that when you go in to have this meeting and have this conversation, you are staying in that space where you hear them, listen to them, and speak to them and respect them, regardless of what the conversation is around. it is still your responsibility as a leader to see them as a human. Bring the human element back into it. That is so, so important. And they're going to have a lot more respect for you. And when you come from a calm and neutral space, guess what's going to happen? The conversation's going to be different. It's going to be completely different. So try this. Let me know what works. Let me know what challenges you have around having difficult conversations. If you would like to have some support around developing this for you or your teams, feel free to reach out to this. This is what we teach. We teach a lot of leaders different tools, and also happy to do a workshop for your team if this is something that your team needs. So stay tuned for the next video.